foundation of the fundamentals to create novel situations where they're successful. Can I interrupt? Absolutely, for
Awesome.
just a few minutes.
You got a deal. Welcome to all of you that are joining us on the live stream, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram and such. I'm Roger Muir, the Vice President of Student Success for Altius Test Prep, and we're standing here in one of our classrooms in our Utah office. Conrad, he's our tutor that oversees all of the mentors, nationally speaking, helps with the training and the developing and the progress of all of them. My thanks to all of you students that are participating today. We just wanted to give all of you guys an example of what an Altius class might be like. Under normal conditions, this would be filled with about 15 students, and it would be a lot of things going on. We try to keep classes down low so that there's not a huge variance from student to tutor ratio, and the ability to really get your questions answered and have the interactive experience. This class has been in motion for about 20 minutes, and you guys have had some interaction with each other, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time other than just to kind of introduce it and let you guys get back to work and let the rest of the nation see kind of what that experience is like.
Awesome. So to kind of get everybody up to speed who's online right now, we are going through some CAR stuff, right? CAR seems to be universally one of the harder sections that people want to have additional help with. And so we're going over just kind of some fundamentals of CAR. We're going to be practicing with some passages that are found in the half-length exam, which is free for everybody. Everyone can get access to the half-length exam on the Altius website. And we're going to go through, we're going to show how we break down passages and make sense of these things, right? CAR seems to be, whenever I see like on Reddit or Student Doctor Network, everyone's like, oh, well, pick the most wishy-washy answer and hope that you get lucky on test day, right? CAR is known as the MCAT score destroyer, right? That's not the case at Altius. We've got the system set up, we know how to make it work, and so we're going to be jumping into some of that stuff. We're already partway through, so I'm not going to rehash any of the stuff that we've already gone through, but jump in, buckle up, this is going to be fun. So, what I want to go through right now is the main idea. Okay, I want to talk through this. So, earlier I said that generally, right, if you had an incredible main idea, you could probably get 8 out of 10 questions right. Okay, so how do we create this main idea? Okay, so generally speaking, what would you guys say would need to be part of the main idea? I don't look too much up there because there's a little bit of a spoiler on there. What would you guys say would make up part of the main idea?
Well, I know it says that the main idea doesn't always come from like the first or last paragraph. It's
Yes.
not like accumulation of what is going on.
Yeah.
But they're just kind of like excerpts of papers and such, so it's not like chronological.
Yeah, so not from first or last paragraph. It's a conglomeration, right?
I would say it has to do with the author's purpose as well.
Good, the author's purpose, I like that. What else do you think is in there?
I think it has to do, this is a different topic, but
Yeah.
it has to do with the tone.
Good, the tone, right? Tone is important. And why do you guys feel that tone is important? I saw you guys kind of nod your heads. Why do you think tone is the most important, is really one of the most important concepts for establishing a main idea?
I think it has to do with what we were talking about earlier with the lobster.
Yeah.
Like, just because the words are there doesn't mean that's what they're trying to say. Like the main idea could be something that's not like explicitly stated, but more of like what they're attempting to show.
Good, yeah, right? It could, kind of going into kind of tone, author's purpose, what is the author, or we could maybe switch that for why, right? Why is the author writing this passage? Okay. Any other thoughts that we could add into the main idea? Okay, I'll give you mine, okay? So this is where I like to start. Again, this is very much training wheels. So this is definitely not an all-encompassing, do this, cookie cutter every single time, but this is a starting point. So I like to do a brief summary of the passage, right? So that would be kind of the conglomeration of the whole passage, like you guys mentioned. And then I go into this, meaning the passage, is important to the author because, right? And so that would be kind of coming up with the author's purpose. Why did the author write this passage? A good example of this would be say we have a passage that's about Canadian geese migration, right? I like to use this as an example. You may not necessarily have a passage that talks about Canadian geese migrating, but you may have something that's similar to that. And the passage author may talk about how air pollution is causing problems with Canadian geese being able to migrate, right? Or the author could talk about how the physiology of the Canadian goose allows it to make these huge journeys, based off of instinct, right? Both of those have two separate purposes, but they're talking about the same thing. And so oftentimes what students will miss is they'll do a kind of conglomeration of the whole passage, right? They'll write a summary of that, but then they don't ask why this is being written, okay? And so focusing on this right here is going to net you a lot of points. So now let's go in and let's jump into a passage really quick. So I've got it pulled up and we're going to work through it together. So this is from the mini exam, or the Pathland mini exam. And do you guys want to let's do one on human visual perception. Okay, this one's maybe a little bit pre-med-ish, but it has some interesting things in it that make it a bit more challenging. The second passage that we're going to do is going to be it's about art, collaborative art. That one's a little bit more straightforward. So we're going to start with this one. We're going to break this down together, okay? And grab a piece of paper out so that you can write either a T-chart or a matrix chart. We're going to be going through all of these together and going to be working through each of these. For those of you on the live stream, the T-chart and the matrix chart, T-chart and the matrix chart are strategies that we like to use, introductory strategies that we like to use to make sure that we grab the most important information from each passage, okay? So I'm going to read through this and I'm going to show you guys how I would break this down, some of the information that I would grab, and we're going to kind of alternate back and forth. So I'll read through this first paragraph and then we'll talk a little bit about it. What stuff do we need to put on here? What stuff do we need to grab? What's important? And then we're going to go into the second paragraph and I'll read through it and I'm not going to stop. What you guys are going to do is you're going to raise your hand or say, hey, Conrad, or whatever, to get my attention to say, stop, we need to talk about something, right? Because I want to make sure that you guys are finding the most important things in each of these paragraphs. And so I'll give you guys a little bit of hints and help when you should probably stop because there's something that we need to know. Okay, so paragraph 1. We begin our discussion by recalling some basic facts about human vision. Okay, this has already given us some good information, right? We know what this passage is talking about. We're going to be talking about basic facts about human vision, right? So I maybe write that as just kind of an introductory, I put basic H vision. H stands for human, right? If you are a geneticist, right, you could put maybe a lowercase h dash vision, right? Because that's how they mark this. You don't want to write full sentences when your guys are taking notes. You don't have enough time. And so something that I did is I kind of created my own version of shorthand. You only need to remember this for a max of like 10 to 12 minutes. So in a week from now, I would probably have no idea what this meant. But that's okay, right? Because I'll be done with this passage in 10 minutes. So be thinking about that, how you can adapt some shorthand, whether that's like, acronyms, whether that's writing, the subject or the object of that sentence, whatever helps you remember what's going on. Okay. So human vision is fundamentally inferential, okay? I would stop here. Inferential is a big word, right? What does that mean? What can we derive from inference or inferential?
Inference.
Right, inference, right? I kind of gave that away, right? So inference, what does that mean?
Like jumping to a point.
Okay, jumping to a conclusion, right? Jumping to a point, implying something. So it may not necessarily be absolutely direct. Okay, that's some good information, right? So sometimes vision can be inferential. So meaning sometimes we can infer things that may or may not be accurate, right? So This sentence now, again, we're only about 2 sentences in, but I've got a pretty good idea of where we're going, right? Where do you guys think that they're going to go with this passage? What do you think they're going to talk about?
How human vision is able to imply things or infer things through how it operates.
Good, awesome, right? That's probably where we're going to go, right? They're probably not going to start talking about the best way to cook Mexican street tacos, right? They're probably not going to talk about that. And so you can go in your mind and start to compress the amount of relevant information that you need to keep inside of your head. Does that make sense? We're trying to kind of narrow in and focus and get to a point, which is the main idea, okay? Our visual system encounters variation of light intensities on the retina and uses those to develop a usable image of the environment. Do you think they're going to ask us any questions on that? Why or why not? You're kind of saying, not really. Why?
I mean, I think they could, but I just feel like in the patterns, it wouldn't tend. I think it's kind of too focused on something, and they're more conceptual about it usually.
Exactly, right? Is that really going to help us with the main idea? Not so much. That's really just kind of a little random fun fact to get everybody kind of caught up to speed on how light enters the eye. They could maybe ask that question in biology biochem, right? But CAR, they're not really going to be asking about science facts because they have 3 other sections where they can ask about science facts.
It just went off.
Oh, it did. There we go. So, according to one well-established account, the process that is followed first identifies contours, fills them in to create surfaces, and then puts them together to construct individual larger objects as fusions or assemblies of these surfaces. Okay, so what is that telling us?
Just further information about how we create images in our brain.
Good, yeah, it's saying, so we start off with, right, they say contours, right, so one shape, basic shapes, right, and then it goes, creates to fill in surfaces, then puts them together, construct individual larger objects. I think of one of those games where it's, you try to be the first to identify what the picture looks like, right, and it's all blurry, and then all of a sudden it starts to come into focus, and you're like, oh, I think that's like a cat, but then it turns out that it's really like a moose, right? But it's just like wherever they it starts to fill in, right? So that's really what they're telling us. So they're saying our vision kind of infers some things by taking through these various steps. My guess, right, like we were talking about before, they're probably going to talk a little bit about how this maybe is beneficial or maybe how this is detrimental, right? Could be potentially harmful, right? Because you may think, oh, that over there is a dog, but it's actually like a wolf or a coyote or something like that, right? You could be wrong. So I think they're going to talk a little bit more about that. So what do you guys feel the tone is in this passage?
I feel like every single card is educational and informative.
Okay, educational
you
and
get a couple
informative.
that are like a little bit negative.
Yeah,
a little positive, but most-
sometimes you'll get a little bit that are a bit more charged. And so we'll say educational.
I agree.
Right, and a lot of them, this is a very common tone, right? And you've identified that. What is the significance of this, though? In regard to questions.
It's hard to make inferences. Or
Okay.
It's more difficult than like a charged one.
Right, so inference is difficult.
Or it's hard to see the author's point of view if they're being pretty like indifferent.
Right, and then it's hard to separate the author. I think these would be really great questions for him to ask. Great for the MCAT authors, not so great for us, right? So we may need to be looking at some of these questions and how we can navigate those if we don't have a lot of information that's given to us. Another great identifier with the educational, which is an extremely common tone, is that I use tone as a litmus test for how strong I should pick my answer choices. So right, if they went in and said, vision is 100% subjective and there's nothing that can be objective about vision, is that a good answer choice based off of just the tone that we've received so far? No, why?
It's too strong.
Okay, let's elaborate on that. Too strong. Do you guys agree that that would be too strong? Why? Why would that be too strong?
He's talking about inferring things, and so if your mind or your vision is inferring, it's not really 100% concrete.
Good, right? So he's adding some level of uncertainty, right? Inside of that, right? He also hasn't said anything super definitive either, right? And so this right here is one of the reasons why you'll see on Student Doctor Network or Reddit or wherever, whatever forum, right, of people who struggle with CAR, they go, oh, that's why you just pick the most wishy-washy answer, because if you pick one that's too strong, then you're gonna get the answer wrong. And the reason, and this is one of those where they're misidentifying the strategy, right? The strategy here is to identify the tone and gauge your answer choices based off of the tone. The problem is that those students don't realize that they're doing that, and so they use it as this blanket statement. So if someone writes a passage that talks about how I don't know, Jack Black is the funniest comedian ever, right? And then they go, oh, well, this author thinks that comedians are funny, right? That's not strong enough. And so you have to gauge the tone so that you know how strong of the answer choices you should pick. Does that make sense? So let's keep moving through, okay? And this is your guys' turn, right? So stop me when there's something important that you think we could help add to our list of information to help us get to the main idea. This parsing operation relies on visual cues to guide the construction at every step. I'm gonna keep going.
Something that I like to do is just if a word, like based on context or based on the situation, just seems like it kind of stands out, I just like to pay special attention to it. Like parsing isn't a word I would use every day.
Good, and let's talk about that. What do you think they mean by parsing? Good, that's a question mark, right? Do we know what parsing is? That's okay if we don't, right? Do we normally use parsing in our everyday language? Probably not. They're gonna tell you what this is. It may be disguised, but they're gonna tell you what this word is. If they introduce something that's new, they're going to give you some context with it. So let's put that as a big question mark, right? So we'll put parsing. We'll put a question mark. What does that mean, right? We know it relies on visual cues to guide the construction or building, right? Of building of what? Buildings, houses, cars?
What you see.
What you see, right? Good. We're keeping focused. Again, I know that sounds silly, but it's always important to keep our focus where it needs to be. Okay? So good. Because this is an inferential process that operates simultaneously through both bottom-up and top-down processes, parsing makes selective use of the available visual information, using what fits the inferential model and discarding what does not. Whew. That was a run-on sentence, right? Where would we split this up so that we can make some sense of it?
Right, well, the comma.
Okay, at the commas, right? Those are usually natural places to stop. So let's go through this first part, right? So it says, because this, what do they mean by this?
Visual.
Parsing, perfect, right? Because parsing is an inferential, which is a, kind of inferring or intuitive process that operates simultaneously at the same time through both bottom-up and top-down processes. What is bottom-up and top-down processing?
It's like bottom up at least is where you have like one minute observation or detail and you use that to make a conclusion about whatever.
Good, and then the other one is the opposite of that, right? So basically either you take large amounts of information to draw a small conclusion, or you take a small amount of information to make wide sweeping conclusions, right? That's in the psych-soc section, right? So they gave us, a little bit of information on that, but I don't think that we would have had to know the ins and outs of all of that to still make sense of this passage. Okay, so they're saying that this is a inferential process that happens at the same time. So we're taking big things and making small conclusions, and small things and making big conclusions. So a lot's going on here. And then it says parsing makes selective use of the available visual information. Okay, so selective use of what we receive inside of our eyes, using what fits the inferential, or whatever we infer, right, or what we think model and discarding what does not. Okay, so can you guys think of an example of kind of this process, how this happens?
I think this was on maybe another passage or just in the book. It talks about, or maybe it's in the psych sections. It talks about like the example of like, I think a bear walks across the basketball court, but like everybody's passing the ball around and it's like, where are you focusing your attention? You don't even notice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of makes me think of something like that, where like you're kind of getting rid of other visual cues that aren't important to what your brain wants to acknowledge.
Yeah, exactly, right? Have you guys seen those videos where, it shows like all the basketball players and it says like count how many times they pass the ball and then you see this like guy in a like bear suit like break dancing across the screen and you don't even notice it until you watch it again, right? Our brain, in order to make sense of things, right, we can't just take all of this information all in at once. We have to strategically organize it inside of our mind in order for it to make sense. And so really what they're talking about so far is that we've got this human vision that's inferential, right? We're going to kind of summarize what we've talked about so far. So we've got human vision, which we make assumptions. It's a very complicated process that involves weeding out or pruning certain things that we don't need, right? So let's keep going here, okay? A point to note is that much of this process is not in one's conscious control. Okay, so we don't control this. We can't just choose what we prioritize visually versus what we don't prioritize. As the early Gestalt psychologists have observed, we cannot help what we see, nor guide it toward pre-specified ends, although we may control what is in our field of view and use attention to select from within it. Okay, that was a lot of information, right? They mentioned somebody here, right? Gestalt. You guys remember Gestalt? He has those Gestalt principles. Okay, right? We don't need to know about those, but I would put Gestalt as someone that is a relevant individual. Okay? And why do they mention Gestalt, right? They didn't have to say Gestalt in there, but why did they add it?
They probably added to make you, because we study it to study for the MCAT, so probably to try to trick you to think you need to pull in outside principles.
Okay.
Or something.
Good, that could be one aspect, right? They go, oh, they know Gestalt. And so far we've said a lot of big words that they probably may or may not know. They know Gestalt, so we're gonna grab that onto that. What's another reason though? Why did the author put this in here? Specifically into this passage.
As an example to show that sometimes our minds, it's unconscious, but our minds make images of how that's really known, kind of how those Gestalt principles do.
Good, right? So you went you went even further in, but just generally, right? It's an example, okay? And what was the purpose of this example?
Authority.
Authority, right? Good, authority. Okay. Did the author put this in for support? An authority figure for support?
I mean, well, the MCAT would say that.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's one of the common questions they ask. Which of the following is most supported or least supported, right? So they could put this in here. This seems to go with the overall theme, right, of what we're talking about. So I would put this as support, right? Notice how much information we got here, and most likely a question that we're going to see just from like a portion of a sentence.
So with that, Colorado, I know you've got a lot more to cover, but could we tackle question one and just see, like, partway through this training, what are we learning today that would actually help us answer
Absolutely.
this first question?
Great. Okay, so let's go here. Okay, question one. Okay, the author implies that human visual perception. Okay, so we've got questions. Okay, we've got to simplify it. What are the MCAT authors really asking us here? Okay, human visual perception. Okay, how would we simplify this question stem? Make it a little bit more digestible, or get at what they're really asking us.
This isn't really shorter, but what does the author think about visual perception? Just makes it a little more straightforward for me.
Okay, so author think about perception, right? Okay,
Yeah, like what is human sight? Like human sight.
okay.
I mean, assuming it continues along these lines, like the whole passage, it's kind of what is the main idea?
Yes, exactly, right? What is the main idea? Okay, that is how I would simplify this question. Okay, you guys see how we got there? Because, right, the author is talking, the entire passage is about human visual perception. That's what it's all about, right? And so now, based off of the information that we've been given, again, we're working with some partial information because we haven't read the whole passage. But spoiler alert, this passage, the first couple paragraphs go along with the rest of the passage. So this is a pretty informative one. There's not some big twists and turns. So this one, in this case, we probably have enough information that we need. So let's take a look at our answer choices now, okay? Let's take a look at answer choice A. Cannot be trusted to reflect reality completely. What do we think about that one? Do we have any inherent issue with it?
It seems strong.
Okay, so, and this is what we'll do here. So B, C, D. So potential issues, too strong.
Yeah, like the author inferred that human visual perception wasn't perfect, but he didn't infer that we like can't trust it ever.
Okay, good. So I think we'll put maybe a star next to the too strong. It feels a little bit strong here, right? Okay, what about B? Can be purposely directed by designers' compositions to alter the viewer's opinions. Think about what we just read.
So in that last paragraph, we talked about how it was unconscious.
Good, right? Unconscious. Okay, and how does that affect answer choice 2?
Makes it wrong.
Okay, it makes it, there's a problem with it, right? And why is that a problem? If it's an unconscious process, can you purposefully do something? No, right? So this answer choice is internally inconsistent with the passage, right? So I would say I'm not feeling super good on that one, right? It doesn't agree with the passage or the information that we've been given, okay? So far, between A and B, A is our best bet, right? We don't like it, but it's still better than answer choice B. And this is where we talked about earlier, picking the best answer. What happens when you get an answer that you don't necessarily like or agree with? Our goal is to pick the best answer, right? They say pick the best answer for each of these. The best answer is going to be correct, but sometimes we could come up with an answer choice E that sounds even better than whatever the correct answer is, but we don't get that option. We don't get to write in our own answer and put it in there. And so we've got to work with what we have, try to discern what the MCAT author wants us to pick. Okay, so answer choice C is in all ways beyond the conscious control of the viewer.
I feel that one's a little too strong too.
Okay, feels a bit strong, right? Okay.
I think that one seems worse than A.
Okay, worse than A. So we'll maybe put, worse than A. And why would you say it's worse than A?
Because it seems there's a few keywords that make it seem even stronger. One, it says in all ways, but then A says, it kind of has a caveat. It's like to reflect reality completely. Like,
Good.
It's like, no,
Good.
So it's like a little less strong, I feel like.
Good. So we can maybe put, on this side some support with it is, I call it hedged. And basically what that means for me is that, when you hedge your bets, right? That's where you kind of put a little bit of something in somewhere else, right? They left a little bit of uncertainty just in case they happen to be wrong, right? And that's a very educational, where is it? It was over here somewhere. Very educational and very informative, tone oriented, right? They're going to hedge their claims, right? This one seems a little bit too all in, and the author doesn't seem like they're completely all in. So I think that's great. I think that that's a pretty good thing to say with answer choice D. I would say let's leave it here for now, just because if we had to pick between the two, we'd pick A. But let's see what answer choice D looks like. Maybe D can roll out one of these other ones more completely. Okay, so it says can be described as basically accurate. And this one's a little bit trickier because the next paragraph talks a lot about this. Okay, one of the things that they talk about in there is that, let's see, I'll just find it here. Not letting me do it. That's all right. But basically what it does is it goes in and gives some examples of where we can find things that aren't necessarily 100% accurate, right? Kind of that idea of, oh, I see something that's furry and four-legged out of the corner of my eye, right? What could that be?
A lot of things.
A lot of things, right? It could be a cat, it could be a dog, it could be a wolf, it could be a coyote, it could be a bear, right? Probably not, but our vision isn't 100% accurate every single time. And they go through and give some examples where they talk about certain individuals who, you'll read these reports of things from, for example, like certain indigenous tribes, when they see ships that come across, they've never seen a big ship before. And so like, oh, I think that's, maybe just a big cloud, right? That's really low in the water. But then when they get up closer, because they have now a frame of reference, oh, that looks like it carries people. It's not a cloud, it's something different, right? Hadn't seen that before, so they didn't have something to visually look into. And so I'll give this one away to you guys because we haven't finished the passage yet. D is not the correct answer on that one. So between our two options, which one should we pick? A, do we want to commit to A? Okay, let's commit to A. That is the correct answer. So did you guys notice how when we broke this down into like what is the main idea, that started to make our answer choices a lot clearer for what we needed. Yeah, granted, answer choice D, we didn't have a chance to read the entire passage, but but between these right here, we were able to use the tone of the author, build that into the main idea, and that gave us an answer that at first we weren't overly sold on because like, yeah, it feels a little too strong. But when given the answer choices that we have, this is the least strong version, the most even of those, and that fits the tone of the author and what they're trying to get across.
What do you think? Helpful?
Yeah.
Insightful?
Yeah.
Different way of thinking that you've been accustomed to? A little bit of a uniqueness. I kind of look at this like, I know when you're talking a time test and every minute counts, and right? Could we do this process during the actual MCAT? Right? That would be ridiculous. And yet it's much like teaching a kid how to ride a bicycle, right? You don't just like teach them to pop a wheelie right from the beginning, right? You've got to learn the balance, and just like every other skill or technique you've learned in life, you have to first learn the foundational experiences. You have to gain the principles of the task in front of you. When you know the why, the how comes a lot quicker and easier, right? Any of you ever watched like the Karate Kid, right? The old version of the Karate Kid where he's got to paint the fence and wash the cars and do all this ridiculous stuff that just seems totally insurmountable. I have to believe that in some cases, as you were looking at this, that might have been your experience where it's like, yeah, right, this is all great philosophy, but I can never spend this kind of time on my actual MCAT. And you're exactly right. What you need to do is in preparation for the MCAT, as in preparation for your life as a physician and a surgeon, You need to build the foundational educational ability, the skill sets, the techniques within you so that that Papa Wheelie experience becomes natural. Okay, so you're probably not there at this moment, but you can get there such that when you finally take your actual exam, this stuff just is intuitive, right? There's a point of riding a bicycle that's intuitive now, correct? We all remember the time where we were like scared to death of actually getting on there, fear of flying and falling. That doesn't happen anymore, right? Most of you guys probably text while you're on your bike. True? Yeah, don't do that. But you understand what I'm saying. Your body and your brain has the ability, the muscle memory capacity, that if you learn these foundational things properly, they will stick with you and get to such a point where things happen naturally without you thinking about it, right? You don't think about tying your shoes anymore, right? Oh, the loop and the hole and the bunny goes. No. We just do that in the middle of eating breakfast while we're driving the car. All those kind of things happen simultaneously. Don't do that either, okay? You guys get my point. What we're talking about is learning the foundational things in your behavior and your skill set such that when you get to your MCAT, it happens intuitively and you can focus on the problem at hand, not all the strategy and the brain work that goes into that. And you could digest all of these types of things by becoming really proficient at some of these basic skills that Conrad showed you today. Make sense? I could use another quick analogy, but think of your favorite basketball star, right? Any free throw, any three-pointer. Do they stop in the middle of the game, like, 40 seconds left of the game, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, balance, shoulders, square them up, get my, that's not going on up here, right? They've just done it properly so many times in the practice world that when the pressure is on and they have to perform, the skill set just kicks in and they hit the net every time. Boom, 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 right? Because it's part of the routine. That's what I'm talking about in regards to an Altius type preparation for your MCAT. Okay? So, good. Well, congratulations to all of you for your experience there, and thank you to those of you online with us, and Conrad for your preparations and sharing the information. We're going to let this team get back to their class, and appreciate you for the interruption, but we'll get you back. But before I do that, I want to do two things. One, this is representative of an Altius class, right? When we can do it properly and safely in person, we do that, and many states are starting to open up, and things are getting more and more back to that scenario. So we're excited for that. In addition to that, we do things online, right? We've been doing online MCAT preparations for like 12 years, and when the canvases shut down and we had to go home and work from that capacity, we did not miss a single class or a single tutoring session with our students. It just flowed into our online format, which we have. So a lot of classes and options. This type of a class is available through our elite course, which is basically an 11-week experience with 24 classes and all sorts of great things, all of the materials and some great participation in that. It's normally $24.99. It's a $2,500 course. That's the tuition. But through the end of this month, we're making it available to you guys participating in this call for $9.99. It's $1,500 off through the next couple of weeks. Okay, we're going to post on the screen a code for that. Just plug in March Elite for those of you that want that. We started such a class yesterday, so if you want to get going, you better kind of make it happen now. But we'll also start a similar class middle of April. So if you have a little time, then that's an option too. So just a couple of things for you on that. Now, I'm going to give away one of these elite programs. This 11-week experience in this classroom, we had $2,499. That gift is being given to Brittany Eberl. Brittany Eberl from the University of South Carolina in Columbia. Congratulations. My team will send you an email and a text. We'll get connected, make sure you get started as soon as possible. And for the rest of you, check out that code which drops that quite dramatically. Grand prize will be given away at the top of the next hour. So we're going to give away a $7,000 platinum program with 45 tutoring sessions and several other prizes in the middle of all of that. Our big crazy MCAT day continues at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for letting me interrupt your class.
Sweet.
Thanks, Conrad.
All right, we're getting back to it.